Most people are learning skills the wrong way, stuck in a loop of endless tutorials, outdated advice, and giving up just before a breakthrough. But you don't have to be most people. By tapping into how your brain actually learns and using science-backed methods, you can master any skill at lightning speed. Forget slow. Forget average. In this video, we're breaking down the best methods you need to learn anything as fast as humanly possible. Let's dive in. If you've ever tried to learn something new, you've probably done the classic sit, watch, and hope it sticks routine. You watch tutorials, read books, or listen to podcasts thinking, yeah, I totally get this. But then when it's time to actually do it, you freeze. Your brain draws a blank. You realize you still don't know what to do. Why? The problem is simple. Passive learning feels productive, but it's an illusion. Think about the last time you learned something difficult. Did it happen when you were rewatching the same tutorial for the 10th time? Probably not. It happened when you were forced to figure something out yourself. This is because of a concept called desirable difficulty. When learning feels too easy, your brain doesn't actually grow. But when learning feels hard, when you're forced to think, struggle, and make mistakes, that's when real growth happens. It's uncomfortable, it's intense, but it's also 10 times faster than passive learning. Here's a fact that sounds too simple to be true. You learn faster by testing yourself than by reviewing information. This is called active recall. When you're forced to recall something from memory instead of passively reviewing it, your brain works 10 times harder, locking in that knowledge like a mental save file. And research proves it. In one study, students who studied by reviewing notes performed worse than students who studied by taking self-tests. Self-testing triggers a memory retrieval process in your brain, which tells your brain this information is important, don't forget it. So, how do you apply this? Stop rereading notes or rewatching lessons. Instead, test yourself constantly. If you're learning guitar, after learning a chord, look away from the chart and see if you can play it from memory. If you're studying for an exam, quiz yourself or try to remember what you just read instead of rereading the textbook. Because if you're not being tested, you're not really learning. Most people think learning means collecting information, but all of that knowledge is useless until it's applied in the real world. Because the goal isn't to know everything before you start. The goal is to start right away. Use that knowledge in practice and fill in the gaps as you go. This way, you only learn what you need right before you need it. You don't have to memorize every chess strategy to start playing chess. You learn one strategy, try it out, fail, then adjust. This approach speeds up learning because you're not wasting time on unnecessary theory that is destined to be forgotten anyway. Number 2, if you've ever found yourself grinding away at a new skill, you've probably experienced the frustration of not knowing what to do next. The task feels endless. No matter how many hours you pour into it, your skill level is hard stuck, and despite staying consistent, you just cannot improve. And the worst part is, you don't know why. That's where feedback loops come in. Feedback loops are the steering wheel. Without them, you can be as consistent as you want. But if you're heading in the wrong direction, all that effort means nothing. Feedback loops are how you know what's working, what's not, and what to do next. So if you want to become better really fast, you must understand how feedback loops work. A feedback loop is a cycle of action, result, analysis, adjustment. If you've ever played a video game, you've seen this in action. You press a button, this is action. Your character jumps as a result, and you decide that was too slow, so you press it earlier next time, and that's adjustment. Feedback loops come in 2 main flavors. First, we have positive feedback loops. These reinforce behavior. If you see success, you're more likely to keep doing the same thing. Think about hitting a bullseye in archery. You immediately feel a jolt of satisfaction, and your brain locks in on whatever I just did, I should do more of that. Then there's negative feedback loops. These correct mistakes. If you mess up, you get an alert and realize, okay, that wasn't it. It's not punishment, it's information. The more you engage with this type of feedback, the faster you adapt. This matters because without feedback, you're flying blind. You have no idea if what you're doing is effective. You might even be reinforcing bad habits. The biggest and most common mistake learners make when learning a new skill is avoiding feedback. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. We'd rather not know that our singing is off-key or that our essays are riddled with mistakes. But here's the truth. Avoiding feedback is the #1 reason people stay bad at things. When people say, I've been doing this for years, but I'm still not good, it's often because they've been avoiding feedback. No coach, no review, just doing the same thing incorrectly over and over. Like someone practicing guitar for hours, but strumming every chord wrong. It's the classic 10,000 hour misconception. People think that if they just put in more hours, they'll get better. But if you're practicing the wrong technique for 10,000 hours, all you've done is master the art of doing it wrong. And here's a secret. The faster you get feedback, the faster you learn. If you only get feedback after a week, your brain has already forgotten what action caused the result. But if feedback comes instantly, like in video games, you adjust much faster. This is why people learn faster with video games than textbooks. Now, not all feedback is useful. Some is too vague, like just do better next time, or keep going, you're doing great. To learn faster, you need your feedback to be clear, actionable, and on time. The best feedback tells you what to do, not how to feel. You don't need someone yelling at you for missing a shot. You need information on how to improve. Good feedback sounds something like, your foot placement is off by 2 inches, which is making you lose balance. Or try pressing the button half a second earlier. Alright, so you know feedback is critical, but how do you actually create it in your own learning process? Here are some methods. Number 1, self-correction. Record yourself doing the skill and watch it back. You'll instantly spot mistakes. Number 2, external feedback. Get someone experienced to watch you and give specific advice. Coaches are human feedback machines. Number 3, deliberate practice. Focus on one thing at a time and try to do it correctly until you get it right. This creates a mini feedback loop with every attempt. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to master new skills ridiculously fast while others stay stuck for months, here's the secret. They don't try to learn everything. Most people think that more information equals faster progress, so they watch more tutorials, read more books, and follow every complete guide they can find. But this creates what's called information overload. You're exposed to so much information that your brain can't tell what's important and what's fluff. An economist called Vilfredo Pareto noticed that 80% of Italy's land was owned by 20% of the people. Later, people realized that this 80-20 split shows up everywhere. This is the 80-20 rule, and it says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. It's the reason why 20% of language vocabulary allows you to understand 80% of conversation. 20% of musical practice techniques lead to 80% of improvement in performance. 20% of coding skills solve 80% of programming problems. This principle is everywhere, and when it comes to learning skills fast, it's a game changer. While most people waste time on fluff and nice-to-know knowledge, the 80-20 master focuses on only the critical few things that actually matter. The key idea here is that if 80% of results come from 20% of the effort, stop doing the 80% of things that don't matter. To master skills quickly, you need to 1. Find the 20% of key actions, concepts, or techniques that deliver the biggest impact. 2. Double down on them. 3. Ignore everything else, at least for now. Number 4. So, if you wanted to climb Mount Everest, would you rather go with a group of beginners who've never seen snow, or would you stick with a crew of seasoned mountaineers? Seems obvious, right? The same logic applies to learning any skill at lightning speed. You level up faster when you surround yourself with experts. Experts aren't just people who know more than you. They're walking, talking cheat codes. They shorten the learning curve, expose you to methods you'd never think of on your own, and most importantly, they show you what you're doing wrong, which is way more important than knowing what you're doing right. The first thing experts do is expose your blind spots. When you're learning a new skill, you're basically feeling around in the dark. You have no idea if you're making the right moves, and that's a problem. You could spend years repeating the same mistake, all because you didn't know it was a mistake. This is called a blind spot, something you're doing wrong but can't see for yourself. No amount of self-reflection will reveal it. Experts, however, see your blind spots instantly. They've been where you are and they know where you're going wrong before you do. It's like a chess grandmaster watching a beginner. They can see 3 moves ahead while the beginner is focused on what's directly in front of them. Imagine you're learning to play guitar. You practice for months, but your playing sounds off. You have no clue why. Then, a professional guitarist watches you play for 30 seconds and says, "Oh, your fingers are too flat on the frets. Tilt them at this angle." That one tweak, instant improvement. You'd never have figured it out alone. If you're learning on your own, you're stuck in guesswork mode. You try a method, fail, try another, fail again, and repeat. This works eventually, but it's slow. Experts skip this step for you. They've already made those mistakes and they know the exact path you need to follow. Instead of guessing and repeating, you're following a proven roadmap. When you're surrounded by experts, you're constantly exposed to their language, terms, metaphors, and mental models you wouldn't hear from beginners. You're also exposed to their mindset, solving problems the way they would, and you're exposed to their standards. Experts have high standards, and when you're around them, you start to hold yourself to those standards too. Experts also create pressure, the right kind of pressure. If you're surrounded by people who are way better than you, you might feel a little out of place. It's uncomfortable, but that discomfort is actually one of the most powerful forces for growth. That's because you feel the need to keep up with them. This forces you to push harder than you would if you were just practicing alone. This positive pressure is a powerful motivator. Your brain doesn't want to be the weakest link in the tribe, so it forces you to rise to the occasion.